why I really, really, really hate when the guy goes into like an existing finished basement that's old. And it's like, I just want to put a little touch of lipstick on them. Like, you're going to have a disaster of a time later on in life. I've had a lot of people tell me, I don't think I want a dishwasher. Yes, you do. Yes, I mean, it doesn't affect my life whatsoever, but I just know that if my wife walked into an apartment and there was no dishwasher, we'd immediately walk back out the door.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and we're back with John from Blackjack Contracting. Hey, John, how's it going?
Excellent, man. Thanks for having me back.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to talk to you today about today's subject matter, which is change orders. Either it's a contractor's worst nightmares or it's how they make all their profit, it seems like, depending upon the contractor. But really looking forward to diving into it and just understanding, let's maybe first explore what is a change order, kind of why do they come out, what's the best way to approach them, and then, how do you actually understand if what you're being charged or how long it actually it adds to the timeline, whether it's appropriate or not when we're talking about change orders.
100%. And you brought up a key point already about timelines, because that's something that needs to be thoroughly discussed when adding a change order. Change orders are a slippery slope in this business. Some people use it as a strategy. We've talked about that a lot of previous videos, is they'll come in low and then try to change order their way up until they make some money. And that's something that's pretty clear that you got to discuss in the beginning. Like, I have a goal of 0 for a project because I think it's awful. So basically, it's not doing your due diligence right in the beginning, right? So people rush into contracts, they don't understand what they're signing. They're not thorough enough. And then what happens is you end up with change order. And what the problem is that, when you're doing your budgets for these projects, none of this is accounted for, and it just really starts to kill your numbers. And you got to be careful with it, because, as I said before, is that it's a strategy for some companies. And that's what I'm trying to warn about today, is that that's why it's so important to do your due diligence up front with that original scope of work. But when you're having change orders, what you need to know in them is if something comes up. So our policy is that the only time you're going to get a change order is if you add something, you request something after the contract signed, or there's some sort of act of God city situation. Most of the time that not relevant. But when it comes to change orders, the key things to them is, first of all, obviously, how much is it going to cost? One thing that we also got to be aware of is that, if it's superseding something, are you receiving a discount for the stuff that was supposed to go in? Sometimes that'd be a nice little, it's easy to pull a fast one over customers on that one, because they'll just charge them for the new thing, but not credit for the other things. That's something you want to make sure that you discuss and it's written down. The other one is, the key one is timelines. So, we just implemented a new program in our company. We have a timeline guarantee now. So we set a date for the project. If we don't meet your dates, then we have to cover the lost rent during the extended overrun. So if I were to send you a change order, it would be very important for me to list that it will extend our deadline by X amount of days. So that's something you want to know. Okay, so if you decide to add this to your project, how much longer is it going to take? And that should be agreed upon up front. The cost is obviously huge. You want it kind of broken down too, is like how much additional it's going to cost, taxes, what's the new subtotal. And you should never, ever do any sort of change order whatsoever, not even for a dime, without a written signature with both parties' signatures on it. Too many times, change orders will come up on a project. The contractor will discuss something with you and you'll say yes or no. Let's just assume you say yes. And then all of a sudden 3 months go by, no one remembers. That's not how much money you told me, and all that. And then the fight starts at the end of the project. So any sort of changes to whatsoever to the original contract must be signed, must have the date, must have the money, and both parties need to sign it. Both parties should have a copy. So that does not happen in the end.
And I just wanted to reiterate your point there. Even both parties can be acting in great faith, right? Like, they can both have the best of intentions, and literally just time erodes your memory, right? And all of a sudden, people literally do forget what they said. That contractor might forget that he said, yeah, sure, I'll just do it for included in the price or whatever. But again, if that wasn't written down, if we haven't documented it, it's really easy for people to misremember.
Yes, sir. And I've seen a lot of problems over my career of that happening. So that's something that you have to take pretty seriously throughout the project. And, remember that you have the power to say no with them too, right? Then they have to keep to their original contract. That's where you're probably going to see, honestly, 80% of the fights that happen between a contractor and the construction project owner at the end is over this subject, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. And it's easily avoidable.
And so let's talk about some of because like when we're thinking about change orders, I'm glad you kind of classified them. There are certain ones that are kind of outside of our control, right? And then there's certain ones that are probably actually avoidable. So what are some common change orders that either you've seen on clients' projects or maybe you've seen other contractors do where, hey, had we actually just been prepared or planned at the start of the project, we could have all been in alignment? Because a few things that I've regularly seen is, people all of a sudden change the type of finishes they want or a layout or something like that. And again, that can actually really disrupt not only our budget, but also our timelines.
That's right. And for us, it's a pain in the butt, to tell you the honest truth, because you kind of have to stop what you're doing. You have to go through a mini estimating phase all over again. You have to prepare a quote. You have to stop work while you're doing it, present the quote, and then all of a sudden, now it's going to change how you do the whole flow again. So I'd rather not have a single one, and it's not even because that's not our strategy to begin with.
Yeah.
Most common ones would be upgrades on material. You went from laminate countertop to quartz. That's an easy one. That's straightforward. What happens a lot in the bait and switch strategy is the trim work or something like that, or they'll be like, okay, oh, now you want quartz. Well, now you have to buy an undermount sink and you have to buy a certain hole tap and all that stuff. We didn't include all that. So you end up thinking that, okay, that's not so bad, $3,000 for a quartz upgrade. And all of a sudden another week goes by and you're getting hit with another one and you're getting hit with another one. It gets very frustrating very quick. That's why you want to make sure, okay, if I'm looking at a line item on the thing and I'm looking at a kitchen, okay, what kind of cabinets, what kind of countertop, does it come with a sink, does it come with a faucet, caulking tile, is it all done? And so it should be listed, itemized, and that's what happens. Oh, we didn't include a backsplash. Or another thing to consider too about that is a selection budget. So if you have a faucet that's $99 from Home Depot, but you want this gooseneck $300 faucet, really on that, it should be listed what the budget for that item is. Now that's going to include a markup. That's fine. There's no problem with that. But it's the point of the matter is that the selection should have a budget number next to it, because there goes another argument. Oh, I wanted this one. Oh, we only budgeted for this one. Here goes the next battle, another change order, right? Flooring upgrades happen. And that's a common one, I would say, in residential flooring. You want to go to a 1-panel door instead of a 6-panel door. That kind of stuff. Those are the ones where people might decide to upgrade. That's all fine and dandy. It's like the bait and switch on oh, well, your kitchen. Well, we didn't include a plumber to come hook it up. Here's another one. That's common knowledge. So it's just an easy way to rack up dollars hit you up for $500 at a time to all of a sudden you're $10,000-$20,000 over budget. And I've seen that a lot. Everybody, we know the story of my origins, and that's basically how we learned that lesson, where you just saw a customer finally get fed up with it and say no, and then all of a sudden projects get stalled out for months at a time. And good for them, to be honest with you. But and then the act of God ones or the unforeseen ones, those can happen. We try to foresee things. But if you have a finished wall and all of a sudden you go in there and there's knob and tube, or there's a rotten wall, unfortunately that's a hard one for any situation, but that's something that should be discussed in the beginning. Okay, there's a potential. That's why I always tell everybody to carry a contingency of 10-15% of the things. So when this stuff happens, or the city inspector shows up and said, that looks like it wasn't permitted, and all of a sudden you got to spend $700 on an engineer or something like that. Those ones can happen. I think it'd be obvious to see if it was, facetious or genuine. And those ones, that's why you have to carry contingency. But the ones that are, if you just notice, all these change orders coming at you for just minute things, that means that the bait and switch is happening, in my opinion.
Yeah. I appreciate you kind of identifying some red flags there. And so talking about on the timeline side of things, what sort of change orders can really disrupt maybe the timeline for a contractor. And a couple that come to mind for me that I've seen people regularly do is they're renovating the kitchen. They originally decided they wanted to go on a really lean budget, so they maybe didn't factor in like a dishwasher. And so the layout wasn't planned for a dishwasher. And all of a sudden now, like, oh, shoot, we'd actually really like that stainless steel dishwasher here. And same with one that I've seen a lot of landlords do that I don't understand why they don't always just commit at the front end, but is deciding to add laundry kind of halfway through a project as well.
Those would be enormous things, because let's just talk about the laundry for a sec.
Yeah.
It seems like such a minute thing, but let's just like, you have framing, you have insulation, you have drywall, you have mud and tape, you have painting, you have electrical, you have HVAC, and you have plumbing. There is a lot of factors that go into one small thing. So, I thought it'd be 1,000. Well, I mean, you got 17 different people to bring here to do this job. And not to mention HVAC and plumbing is not very easy to retrofit into an existing place. Yes. Electrical is still not easy, but it's a lot more easy. And you wouldn't believe how many times I see people do kitchen renovations and forget they need an electrician because, the layout's changed or something like that. So, let's talk about a simple dishwasher. You had no plans for it. Now the plumbing's going to be easy for you because it's right next to the sink, but all of a sudden you got to bring a wire all the way from the electrical panel. You have to shift over cabinets. If you're using an IKEA kitchen, fortunately, very maneuverable. We could just adjust things, slide on the rail. But say you ordered a custom kitchen, now you're talking about remanufacture, and say kitchen goes installed, you change your mind, you could be talking 6 weeks to get more cabinets. Another one is like, not making your material selections well in advance. So 3 days from the guys need the flooring, you decide to pick a certain floor. Well, guess what? That's not available for 4 weeks. That's why it's important to do all the planning up beginning. Say load bearing stuff too is one of those things that all of a sudden I want this wall open. Well, now you're talking a big delay, because let's say you want to do it the whole legal way. Now you're talking an engineer, a drawing, a permit. You're talking structure, footings, temporary walls, drywall, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, all that stuff, right? So that's why if you're going to do changes throughout the project, you're better off to do minor things. Oh, I want a different paint color. I want a trim upgrade, maybe something like that. But that's why it's important to kind of, really have a heart-to-heart with yourself of what the true budget is for this project up front, and not change your way through it, because that'll take forever. And that one's, other than the guidance factor, I wouldn't really put that one on the contractor unless he just didn't even have the discussion. And that's half the thing about it being a contractor, especially if you're the one dealing with the customer, you're the salesperson for the company, is really guiding people. And every action has a reaction. So if you want to do this, it's going to cause this, this, and this. And that's one of the challenges I face with training my own salespeople, is to see all the things that go with every aspect of it. And, on the change order front, all of a sudden you have to get 12 different people involved with one thing, and it all costs money, right? So that's why change orders are notoriously going to be more expensive than an original scope of work. Because people are going to mark that up a lot higher. That's why if you can avoid it, you avoid it. Do all your planning up front.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate you kind of sharing that perspective. And I think that's one of the critical factors when like making sure you've got the right contractor, right team on the job is, do they actually understand what your underlying goals are, right? So if I'm saying I want to get top rent for this, basement apartment that we're doing a duplex conversion on, well, to get top rent, I probably do need a dishwasher. I probably should have in-unit laundry, right? And the contractor that's not experienced might just be like, well, customer wants what the customer wants, and I'm just going to go do exactly what they asked. And then that's where we end up with those, oh, well, just add laundry. It's not a big deal, right?
Yeah, not a big deal. Just break up the floor and, all that stuff. But no, you're right. And guiding, I've had a lot of people tell me, I don't think I want a dishwasher. Yes, you do. Yes. It doesn't affect my life whatsoever. But I just know that if my wife walked into an apartment and there was no dishwasher, we'd immediately walk back out the door. Right. So that's, being a contractor is, especially with a newer investor, is a lot of counseling and a lot of education, because they don't know, and that's okay. That's not their job, but not giving them the proper advice. We've done a lot of rentals in our career. We know what people are looking for. Most people looking for a nice open concept, and they want clean, gray, lines feel warm and cool and safe and all that stuff, but they want the modern functions today. There's so much competition in the rental market these days because, you know, we're pumping out hundreds of units a month now, right? So that makes more competition. You have to set yourself apart somehow. That's why I really, really, really hate when the guy goes into like an existing finished basement that's old. And it's like, I just want to put a little touch of lipstick on them. Like, you're going to have a disaster of a time later on in life. But that's, again, in the end, the customer gets what they want, but it's our job to guide them along the way.
Yeah, really appreciate you sharing your insights and expertise on this, John. And just to summarize for anyone listening at home, so essentially, you know, step one in trying to avoid the change orders or trying to avoid expensive change orders is really just actually knowing what we want, right? So making sure that you're very clear. And then once we're actually starting to get into the contract with our contractor, making sure that it's really detailed, right? So listing very specifically detailed items for anything that, I guess, at what point should people be, you know, specific, and at what point is it maybe too detail oriented? Like, you know, we were talking about faucets, appliances.
Sure. I mean, you don't need to tell us how to do our job. You need to just tell us what you want and where you want it. So you don't need to go into, I want framing on 16-inch center, that kind of stuff. What you do want to say, what you want is display your vision for the project. Be really clear on the finish, the appearance. Like, we don't have to have an architectural designer, but you know that you want a certain style trim, you want a certain style window, you want a certain style kitchen, and you want it to go relatively here. We're going to guide you through like the legal aspects of it, where we can place things. You know, I mean, if you say, I don't care what trim, well, you want to be careful with that, because, you know, I can go to Home Depot and buy trim this big and buy it for or we can get you a nice tall trim for a few cents more, and it's going to change the whole look of your basement. The scope of work is, the original scope of work is so under valued or you know, upfront, to make sure that, you know, we're constantly adjusting ours to make it more and more clear. Now, you know, to read one of my contracts is like 60 pages long, because now we're going unit 1 electrical and listing it out, unit 2, you know, it's just, but it saves, by doing all the work up front, saves so many problems in the end. And even for protecting ourselves, I don't want to be told, no, you promised me that. Well, no, it says right here and you signed it, right? So, you know what I mean? So we want to make sure on our end we're protected. But the same thing for you guys. You need to protect yourselves by making sure the scope of work is clear. I read some other contractors' quotes as advice, and sometimes, like, I can't decipher what's going on here, and this is my job. You're not going to be able to decipher it. So that's why it's the scope of work. A good scope of work will save you a lot of money in change orders, and which means you're going to have to put in, you know, 5-10 hours in the beginning, but it could save you 50 hours and a lawyer later. So
yeah, absolutely. And then I guess the final step there is, if and when the change order does need to occur, again, we need to be specific with it. So just making sure that we've really laid out what is changing, what's being substituted, you know, what's the net total impact on our cost.
And timelines.
Yeah, and timelines, right.
So timelines in the investor world, I think, as I said before in this channel, is I think it's almost number one rated versus cost. And it makes sense to me. So, you know, that's something that as a company, we now have to strive towards improving timelines, and that's our goals, and that's why we have these guarantees, but they have to be documented. Handshake agreements don't work in this world anymore. It's not the 1950s, unfortunately, though it should. It doesn't work anymore. And most people know we're busy. So we're not going to remember everything. You're not going to remember everything. So simplify it. It's got to be written down. So now, even if it's, I mean, a piece of line paper with the agreement is better than nothing. Yeah, absolutely. And again, the more detailed, the better usually when we're doing that. So really appreciate you just kind of summarizing for us here, John, you know, what are change orders? What do we need to take into consideration? And for anyone that wants to reach out to John or his team, we're going to have links to all of Blackjack's contact information in the video description down below. Again, really encourage you guys to reach out to John. Obviously, you want someone on your power team that's as experienced and has the foresight the way John does, because again, I see so many investors get into deals just really kind of on a hope and a prayer with their contractor, just crossing their fingers, hoping that they're not going to get scammed or ripped off. Again,
I think a lot of scams, a lot of ripoffs weren't really that at the start. It was just everyone was disorganized getting into the project. And all of a sudden that ball of wax really starts coming undone.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, John.
Anytime, man.